Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the TV Pilot's License Flight number 14 with service to Gotham. We ask that you please fasten your headphones at this time, secure your podcasting device, and remember that while the seatbelt signs are on, please refrain from changing into your superhero costumes in the bathrooms, even during an emergency.
Welcome to the TV Pilot's License. My name is Geoff Kerbis, joined by Maxwellsing and Inman. How you boys doing today?
We're back, baby.
Nada podcast.
All right, Max, you only get 10 more of those.
Well,
I promise to use them wisely.
Well, after our Thanksgiving break, we decided to do something a little bit different. We've never done 2 animated shows in a row before, but with the passing of the great Kevin Conroy, we decided to honor his legacy today and do the Batman animated series. But, you know, boys, today, as we talk about this 1990s classic, wait a minute, I see a signal in the sky. It appears that it is a nerd signal. So while we navigate the streets and skylines of Gotham, we will be joined by a special guest pilot. Our guest pilot today can be found on the stage, on screen, and over the airwaves. She is a performer at the Otherworld Theatre and a co-host of the Relatable Nerds Podcast. Please press your call buttons and welcome Ilsa Morales. Welcome,
ding, ding,
Ilsa.
ding, ding, ding.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, Ilsa.
Yeah.
Oh my god, thank you so much. That was so nice. Hi guys.
Thank you for responding to our
Hello.
extremely generic method of communication, just floating something in the sky. It still works. It still works. Twitter is dead. It still works.
Exactly. Twitter is over, so now I've just been waiting for smoke signals. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Of course. Well,
yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Ilsa, we're really excited to have you on. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Relatable Nerds Podcast?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay, so I host a podcast called Relatable Nerds. I have a co-host named Kyra. We are both Latina and women, and we're nerds, and we like to talk about everything in the nerddom, like pop culture topics, like Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, Marvel, DC. I expect that's why I was asked here today. But we just like talk about like Star Wars and things like that, and we just talk about it from the perspective of like being like women of color, and we're also just like pretty dumb also, but we know like
The definition of nerds is expanding.
Exactly. We know quite a lot about comic books and like Star Wars and pop culture, but not a lot about other things. And it's just a fun podcast, and I encourage you all to listen. I don't know if that was a good sell, but
I'm
it's
in.
good.
Yeah,
I'm in.
We're completely.
You know what
in.
you should do is the Batman animated series. I think that one might be a pretty solid thing to start off with.
We've had like a whole episode just talking about like Batman's dick. That's the kind of like stuff that we like will discuss.
I mean, I would not be surprised if that doesn't come up in this episode, but we're gonna talk. We'll see. We'll let the evening take us in its course. Well, Ilsa, thank you so much for joining us. For those who might be here just to hear Ilsa's opinion, possibly more about Batman's dick, or possibly about other things.
Who can say?
Max, do you mind telling folks about the podcast that we're doing today?
Absolutely. But first, Jeff, I just gotta say, we're 14 episodes into this. We have to stop saying we're gonna do something a little bit different this week. We've done like 3 things total so far. Everything's gonna be different for a good long time. But welcome aboard to TV Pilot's License. We are a podcast that breaks down and analyzes the pilot episodes of some of TV's most famous and infamous shows. We figure out how these things were greenlit, what made them successful as pilots, if they could be made today, and if we're inclined to keep watching. We've got 13 other episodes now, wherever you get your podcasts, so go back and listen, and welcome aboard. We hope you have a smooth flight.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Max. And Rich, you always come in with something a little bit extra, a question maybe of the week. So what is Rich's question of the week.
Yeah, we're thought provoking this week. We're in a week dominated with news about billionaires. I want to set the record straight that I don't think Batman is a superhero, and I think he's just a rich person with a lot of fun tools, and a lot of free time. And so I'm curious now, since we've watched this show about a person with just oodles of money, what is an actual superpower that you would want?
Wow. What
Is
a
this
question.
too deep a question for the nerd group?
No, I think this is a great question. Ilsa, I'd love to hear what your superpower of choice would be.
Yeah, I already know. It's super easy for me. I want to be like Magneto. I want to have his powers. Like, I want to be able to manipulate metal. I've always wanted this power, and I think it's because I have really bad road rage, and I would just murder people in front of me, like, all the time. I would just, like, crush their cars and move them out of the way. So I would be so evil, so I shouldn't have a superpower, but that would be my superpower.
What a great reason.
I mean, I'm worried our podcast now can be evidence for a jury and a trial. But,
State Farm, if you're listening, stop.
Yeah. Max, what about you?
For me, I've wanted to go with like the Scarlet Witch, like Wanda Maximoff ability to just sort of like manipulate matter and space. I would do it for really mundane stuff though. Like, it takes way too long for a pot of water to boil on a stove. I would just be like, all right, this is gonna be boiling now, or like, we're gonna like decorate my apartment. Just like really low stakes power, like low stakes usage of really like high stakes powers.
Ilsa's using hers for traffic. You're using yours for like mild interior decorating.
Well, Rich, wait till you hear mine.
Oh, God. It's the ability to knit really quickly.
I actually, so there's a variation of this power of the idea of like manipulating time and space. If you know the 2002 hit movie Clock Stoppers, I want the ability to manipulate time so that I can do things quicker and find more time in the day. Could you imagine it only taking like a minute to get to work? Because like in LA traffic especially, you're just biking through cars, or
it's called owning a motorcycle, Geoff.
Maybe that 4-hour dinner that you want to prep still takes 4 hours, but it's 1 minute of real time.
Man, we got a podcast hosted by 3 manipulators. What is this, Barstool?
Welcome back to Call Her Nerdy.
I've always wanted to. Oh my God, that should have been the name of my fucking podcast. I'm so mad right now.
We'll work on the rebrand after this.
Yeah.
Geoff, I've always thought about like being able to stop time, but then you know what worried me is like, would you still age?
I mean, yeah, you possibly might age faster, but like, hey, I'm over 30. It's only going downhill from here. Embrace it.
Yeah.
Rich, what about you?
I actually have a horrifying theory that you know, when I take 3 milligrams of an edible, it kicks in that someone could be stopping time constantly and having that in real life, and no one would ever know. Anyways, mine is also time related, but I would love the ability to go back in time. Because if someone was mean to me at Trader Joe's, I could go back and seduce their dad and they would never exist.
Oh my God. That's great. That's wonderful. Well,
Oh my God.
Rich, what a way to kick off an episode about a classic animated series about a man who doesn't have superpowers.
But can seduce your dad.
Oh,
has.
I think Bruce can absolutely do that. Well, before we talk a little bit more about Batman the Animated Series, let's talk about a quick synopsis. The Dark Knight battles crime in Gotham City with occasional help from Robin and Batgirl. That's it. We don't see 2 of those characters in this episode, but it does give a decent explanation about what we're going to talk about. But Max, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how Batman the Animated Series came to life.
Absolutely. So as we've mentioned, we're going to be talking about Batman the Animated Series, specifically the episode The Cat and the Claw, which originally aired on September 5th, 1992. Just a quick note before I get into background history. This, like a lot of other animated shows, has some different episode orderings depending on where you look. The episodes did not air in the order they were produced originally. But this episode is the first televised one. If you're streaming on HBO Max where you currently can find it, it's episode 1. If you happen to have a DVD box set, things are a little bit out of order. I just wanted to clarify that because we have seen this happen with some animated shows. Same with our Father of the Pride episode. But this show is created by two gentlemen named Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski. The two of them were working for Warner Brothers on the Fox Kids show Tiny Toon Adventures, which you may know as being the first TV project of Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment. So he's a producer on that. It's basically the next generation of Looney Tunes characters studying at Acme Luniversity.
Oh, I remember this very well.
It's also just wild to me that like Spielberg was producing Tiny Toons Adventures while I'm guessing being in production on like Schindler's List and like having to balance both of those things simultaneously, which must be like really difficult to keep track of. But anyways, after the success of Tim Burton's studio Batman film, the head of Warner Brothers approaches the animation division, which is a huge list of properties that they own, looking into the next animated series they could create. So Tim and Radomski basically, they go to Batman right away. This is the one they want to do. They want to try and do a new original take. And they make this 90-second pilot presentation with no dialogue to show off the animated style they're working on. From there, they get commissioned to make a half-hour pilot with a 65-episode order off the bat,
insane.
Which is just, it's huge. And these guys, they've never been showrunners before. They've been working on like true kids animation, and so they're a little bit lost. So they bring in two other people. They bring in a writer named Alan Burnett, who has worked for years on things like Super Friends and Smurfs, along with one of their Tiny Toons writers, Paul Dini. And they're all super excited because they get to break away from this like kind of campy 80s children animation, and they get the approval to do things like guns and fistfights as long as like it's alluded to and not actually showing like full-on murdering happening. They get a lot of leeway. Mm-hmm. So they decide to draw from things like old film noir, Alfred Hitchcock films, as well as a lot of like the Batman universe graphic novels that were coming out, looking at stuff by like Frank Miller and Alan Moore, who you may know from projects like Sin City and Watchmen as well.
Oh, cool.
What I thought was super impressive here is that these guys actually crafted this massive show Bible, essentially an overview of everything they wanted to do, rules for the series, and it's so detail-oriented. This Bible, you can find it online with a little bit of research. It's 153 pages long. And I just want to read one thing really quick. It's the opening page to it. It's their introduction to their showrunner Bible.
It's the first 35 pages.
And so yeah, this is the intro to the series. This is their first pitch. Night in Gotham City. Only the faintest rays of moonlight break through the steamy darkness. Shadows are black, twisted, and frightening. The thick night air carries many sounds. Breaking glass, sputtering neon, harsh, bitter voices, and police sirens. Always police sirens. Most of Gotham's daytime inhabitants have long since fled to the suburbs or into the security-gated apartments. This is not a safe place after dark. One thing and one thing alone keeps Gotham from drowning in a sea of corruption and despair. It is a grim being cloaked as much in mystery as he is in shadows. Like a bat, he dives out of the night to feed on Gotham's evil. To some, he is merely a legend. To others, he is a dedicated, driven avenger. And to criminals, he is their worst nightmare. He is Batman.
Oh, Batman.
I mean,
It just
Other
sounds
thing
like
that I
he
think
hates
is cool
poor
is that-
people.
oh my god.
He might.
Yeah.
The
No one
other thing
ever
that I thought
talks
was super cool is that these guys basically created their own artistic style for this show that they call Dark Deco. Basically, it combines 1940s Art Deco with elements of film noir and some of the Gothic architecture really used heavily by Tim Burton. So these guys basically like made their own visual style and they leaned on it heavily, and we created something that I thought was super fun to watch. And that brings us to September 5th, 1992, and the show's premiere.
And with that, let's just dive right into the show premiere. And Max, you talked about that 30-second pilot of sorts that they did to introduce the idea of the show. And that was our introduction, which is crazy enough that they just were like, hey, we love this so much, we're going to put this in front of every single episode of Batman the Animated Series. And we got that amazing Danny Elfman intro. Once I heard Danny Elfman's score, I was in. I was like, okay, we're completely here. Like, I'm ready for Batman to just take me away as a whole. What did y'all think about that, like, intro because I brought the show to Rich, you, and Max, being like, we gotta do this. And you guys said, like, this is Jeff's Super Bowl. This is Jeff's OC. Like, he is ready to go. He's so excited about this. I'm texting you guys throughout the week being like, did you watch the right episode? Did you make sure everything was right? And what did you think after just watching that pretty, like, big introduction to the show?
I love this opening sequence. Like, right off the bat, there's an explosion from a bank. You get these shadowy figures that move in really unique ways. It looks gorgeous for 1992. The first thing I thought was just how nice the animation looks on this. But it's also very comic-like, which I really appreciate. It feels like you're flipping through pages. There's a real, like, warmth and texture to it. It just looks stunning.
Yeah, a lot of the back, if you notice, like, for those, like, first 2 minutes of the introduction where we have literally zero dialogue, a lot of the scenery in the back doesn't move. And so you could basically just do screenshots of every bit of each of those scenes, of each of those action moments of him, like, chasing down the robbers and stuff like that. And be able to follow along as a comic book series. And I thought that was pretty fascinating. It was like a really cool choice that they used to open up the show. I mean, did either of you grow up, like, reading the actual physical comic books for Batman?
I know that I did. My older brother got them from my parents. And I was the person who got the hand-me-downs, which is awesome in that sense. Like, I think they're still somewhere hidden in my parents' home. Also, what about you? Like, when you saw this introduction, what were you thinking? And, like, as just a whole of, like, hey, I get to watch Batman this week to be on a podcast.
I was so excited that I got to watch Batman to be on a podcast. I do, and even though I think that, and I talk about it a lot on my podcast about how I think that he just needs to pay his taxes, and then probably Gotham would be a lot better, instead of, like, beating up poor people all the time. But, like, it's still, like, he is something from, like, my childhood who I, like, love, and at the time, you know, I wasn't thinking about that when I was watching this. Yeah.
No, that's so right.
The animation I actually thought was complete garbage because I'm used to
oh, yeah?
higher caliber, like, cartoons. Like, I'm a big fan of, like, Star Wars Clone Wars, and those look like actual people and stuff. But then, Max, you described it as, like, flipping through a comic book, like, back then, and I was like, oh my god, exactly. And now, like, I actually appreciate the animation. Like, it does look like that. And now my mind has changed. Like, I don't think it's garbage anymore.
End of podcast. Good night, everybody.
Ilsa just won them all back. She, like, everyone, if you stayed through that, you're in. But, like, after this intro, I could definitely see how, if you did not have an understanding of the vision of the showrunners, how you could be like, all right, I'm interested in seeing more. And as we start the episode, we are introduced to one of these pillars of Batman fandom, of Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, in this, just the animation of her climbing up, and you notice, like, in just a single moment, she does have her cat. I want to talk about the cat's name. If you caught the cat's name,
I did
cat's
not.
name is Isis.
Yes.
In a post in the late 2000s world, you might be like, why would they use that name? It is the name of an Egyptian goddess.
Yes.
So just, like, a little bit of background right there. But I thought we would just, like, smooth over why that might be a little bit of a questionable thing. But I also wanted to ask the question of, I love that Catwoman uses a cat to cat burgle people. Is there another animal that you would like to own as a pet to do other tasks for you with? I'd like to open this up to the crowd.
I've heard it's pretty hard to catch a ferret, so I think a ferret would probably be a good little Wrigley guy to go and steal jewels and stuff like that. I think they're up to some mischief.
I'm just obsessed with this cat going full Thomas Crown affair and, like, dipping and diving over laser beams.
Ilsa, what about you?
I would think like probably like a wolf. Like my mind went to like Princess Mononoke, and I was like, I would like to be like riding on top of like a wolf and just like a badass. Like I don't know, go to the grocery store, even like everyday tasks. Like that's my ride.
I love that.
Is it too simple that I just want to have a pigeon that carries notes for me to other places around town? Like, I don't know. USPS is garbage right now.
If you're like Lawrence Fishburne and John Wick just on the roof with like hundreds of pigeons.
That's where you'll find me in later in my life once I retire.
Oh my god.
But as we see Catwoman steal this beautiful necklace from the 1%, the rich, almost in this Robin Hood-esque act, we meet our figurehead of the series, Batman, who's been stalking her the entire time. Like, sort of a little bit creepy. That was my first thought when we're introduced to Batman, is like, he couldn't have helped before she broke into the apartment. He had to watch the entire crime happen like a narc.
But
like, it's
that's
a little
how
bit...
cops work. You know, they can't, like, you have to commit the crime first before they can help you. You know, like,
Yeah, Geoff, it's called a stakeout.
I don't want to take this in so many places, but, like, you know, like, well, like, I mean, like, if you're getting
go ahead.
by,
Go
like,
ahead.
your boyfriend until he, like, murders you, they can't really do anything about it.
Unfortunately so.
I mean, that is how
the dark realities of Gotham and just, I guess, reality.
I'm really excited for the Law and Order Batman animated series crossover where
I want to be like a showrunner.
Oh my god. But after Batman like sort of introduces himself to Catwoman, we have one of like when it comes to animation, there's some scenes that are just really fun to watch. We talked about this with Charlie Brown and Snoopy making toast and like that animated montage. Them running from building to building was just really cool. And the small detail that I really loved was watching ISIS follow them. In this small, they didn't even have to draw that out, but you see them leaping and Batman somehow beating her to places that she was going to be. But then in the background, there's always ISIS. In something that could have very
always
much
is.
just... Yeah, I mean, isn't that the truth? But we end up, Batman and Catwoman get separated, even though Batman saves Catwoman's cat, which was like sort of a little bit cold that there's this cat that helped her out, and then she's just like, it's gonna get hit by a car.
Yeah, that's an Easter egg for the acclaimed screenwriting tip book, Save the Cat.
But any other thoughts from this like opening scenes that we were able to get from the start of this pilot?
I liked that Batman did save the cat, and he was so clearly like a cat daddy. Like, I can't imagine him having a dog, because like he never gets that excited, but he would be like, I feel like his ultimate level of contentment is like a cat like purring on his lap. Like, I could totally see that. So I get why they like have a thing.
Every billionaire just needs a cat to sit on his lap in a lair.
Max, what about
for
you?
me, very big fan of when Catwoman is going up the building. There's like a little like glockenspiel in the background as her claws move up the brick by brick. Also,
Incredible Foley work.
The second time that Batman pops into frame and startles Catwoman and Isis, there's this look of terror on Isis's face that the animators.
Oh no, Max.
With any animated series, there's also a cameraman in the animation.
Max, is Batman in the room with you right now?
But they stay on Isis's like shocked face for a very long time, which just feels very like campy and comic-y, and I really enjoyed that detail in an otherwise very dark noir-y like chase sequence.
Definitely. I just love the overall flirting nature while jumping from rooftop to rooftop, because it seems like, I mean, almost immediately the show doesn't feel like it's for kids and it doesn't feel like it's for adults. It's for like a combination.
Yeah.
Jeff's eyes just lit up.
Yeah, because I literally have a note in my thing of how is this show for kids? Because I'm like the sexual chemistry between Catwoman and Batman is electric. I am fully prepared for them just to be like, hey, you know what? Screw this necklace. Let's go back to my mansion, or let's go back to wherever Selena Kyle lives before we find out that she's very wealthy. And, like, let's just have a good time instead of being people of the night in this instance. After the scene, after Selena Kyle gets away, we're taken to a very different side of Gotham. And Max, I think you sort of talked about it really well in the showrunner's Bible, of the idea of there is this elite level of wealth that is in Gotham, and we're brought to a bachelor auction of Gotham's most eligible in this instance. And we're introduced to Bruce Wayne. And Max, I'm going to make fun of you a little bit, because when we asked for questions for the episode, you said, who is Batman? Because they never... That's the one thing that, like, this pilot sort of, like, references to. But if you came in having no idea who Batman was, or that Batman was Bruce Wayne, this does the one thing that, like, I think a lot of nerds complain about Batman with, is you never see a Batman movie without them being like, okay, Batman is Bruce Wayne, and we have to show his parents getting shot after, like, going to the movies or an opera. This just goes and is like, oh, this is Bruce Wayne. Here's a different side.
I should point out that if you read this showrunner Bible, one of their first rules they lay out, like, after that intro, is that we're not going to discuss the Wayne family. We're not going to discuss the murder, the movie they saw, Crime Alley. It's like, that's like a hard golden rule, is that we do not get into this, like, come up of Batman. It's just, he is Batman, he is Bruce Wayne, this is our world. And growing up with so many film iterations in my lifetime and having to hear that story time and time and time again, it's really nice just to, I don't know, be treated to, like, be smart enough to, like, figure it out on the fly.
Yeah, it definitely was nice. Rich, were you about to say something?
Well, we're, like, only a couple Batman franchises in when this came out. Like, now it's just, like, every friggin' year we have a new Batman, and it's like, pretty oversaturated. And I'm glad that they made the creative choice to, like, not go into that and rehash it again and again and again, because it's probably already been done by the, like, the 80s Batman movies and stuff like that. That is, like, honestly, it's a nice choice, I think. And also, with the rules that they made for the violence in the show, you notice that, like, no one actually gets shot. No one, like, there's no blood, there's no death. It is, it is something heavy off a top shelf, like, clunk someone in the head, and then they have, like, birds dancing around their head. It's like that type of violence. And I think showing the Bruce Wayne, or the Wayne family murder, would, like, kind of go against those rules in general.
So I want to talk about this auction, because at first not that I have attended a bachelor auction by any means.
They're so common.
Yeah, very common. First, I want to talk about Bruce Wayne's shape. Bruce Wayne is the most square-shaped man I have ever seen in my life. He either needs a better tailor, or I'm worried about the state of being. We talked a little bit about Twitter going under, but he does have a very Elon Musk-esque shape, if you've ever seen those photos of Elon on his yacht where he's just a square. Like, in every angle you look.
My dude Bruce is built like a rhombus.
But during the scene, so one of the really interesting things that I found out about why Kevin Conroy was chosen was the animation voice director of this show really wanted to have an actor that could pull off the, as they said, quote unquote, sex appeal of Bruce Wayne. He's supposed to be this bachelor. And after testing all of these different actors that were a little bit larger as far as name, they came across Kevin Conroy, who was more known as, like, a bit actor. He had a few roles in a few series through time, but it was his voice as Bruce Wayne that was just so different than the voice that he did for Batman. And you started to get a little bit of that in this scene, like, of him just one-off talking to these people who were in the auction. Ilsa, I wanted to ask you, Bruce went for $10,000 in the auction.
Opening bid 500.
Opening bid 500. That's a
billionaire.
wild change. How much would you be willing to bid on a date with Bruce Wayne?
Are we accounting for inflation here, Jeff?
No, we're not accounting for
right?
inflation.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like 10 grand didn't seem like much, like at this point, like in 2022, but maybe in 1992 that was like 20 grand or something. I mean, sky's the limit. If I can just like go out and steal from sleeping old women all the time with my full set and just like, you know, make a nice little hole in their window, sky's the limit. Bruce Wayne, he is very sexy, and like throughout the show, like he's so smooth. Like I guess we'll talk about it later when we get to those scenes, but he has like really good lines where I was just like, oh, okay, Daddy, thank you.
I did like, though, after Selena Kyle, we're introduced to Selena Kyle. We, at this point, do not know about her other identity, but I did really like that in a change of pace for Batman being super smooth, Bruce Wayne being super smooth, that we got this moment where Bruce Wayne was almost like flummoxed, that Selena Kyle didn't want to go on the actual date with him. Like, the animator very clearly made the character blush in this instance. And then seeing Batman have to be like, no, like, you really want to go out with me, like, I am going to go on a date with you, like, no matter what. It was like sort of charming in a way, even though I did not like that he grabbed her to be like, you're going out on a date with me, sort of very frat boy-esque, but like at the same time, like there was some charm in there a little bit.
He knew he was doing something wrong, because like in the animation, because I was like, ew, like, because he grabbed her, but then he like kind of like, in the animation, they show him, like, backing away from it, like, putting his arm down. Like, he was like, oh, my God, that was aggressive. Like, he, like, noticed it about himself, which I was like, okay. But, yeah, I
king.
remember that part. Yeah.
I've got a geography question really quick.
Gotham is New York.
It's Pittsburgh, New York,
Okay.
and Chicago.
No, but
I
here's
looked
my
up
question.
Gotham County, and it said New Jersey.
What?
I Googled it.
They
That's
reference
even worse.
Yeah.
They reference Gotham later in the episode being a population of 10 million people, but also there's apparently a large mountain lion population just outside of Gotham. Where are all these mountain lions? It can't be New York City. Like, I was like, is this Los Angeles? Like, what is Gotham if there's this many mountain lions just about?
Gotham is in your heart.
Yeah. Gotham was with us the entire time.
It's the fifth character.
It's the friends we made along the way. But after this auction, as Bruce Wayne is flirting with Selena Kyle, they're walking outside, and we see the first instance of really crime-ridden Gotham in this car chase scene, where Batman or Bruce just sort of ghosts and is like, all right, I'm in it to win it. This was really, like, I have to say, one of the only big... I'm surprised how little action was actually in this pilot, if that makes sense. And I think that's sort of me speaking from 2023 as a perspective, right? Because, like, you don't get through an episode of Rick and Morty without, like, 10 scenes that are gigantically overstimulating and action-packed, and you have to pay attention to every single bit of it. But this was really that only scene where it's like, we get to see Batman be Batman. Does that make sense? Or am I just overly critical of a cartoon show for kids?
Well, I think it's a very plot-driven show, but I do get what you mean. There's very few large, intense, actiony sequences. So when all of a sudden these guys have like an army surplus truck and they're firing off a machine gun into the middle of the night, it's like, oh, okay, we're not in like a charity auction anymore. Like, this is a hard contrast.
Yeah, if you're living in Gotham, move. Why are there still 10 million people living there?
Because they can't afford to move.
Oh, because of Batman.
I know, it's all the Wayne's fault.
It is.
So
Oh, God.
after this this chase down, we get introduced to Commissioner Gordon in like a very brief glimpse of a moment as Batman is just in an alley asking, like, this was So I think it was this year that the Batman with Robert Pattinson came out.
Yes.
And it did sort of like, I didn't realize how much the relationship of emo Robert Pattinson Batman with Commissioner Gordon was very similar to the animated series of like, I'm just going to ask you, I'm going to pelt you with questions and you better answer them for me sort of thing. Max, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It feels like the Jeffrey Wright version of Commissioner Gordon that we got this year with Matt Reeves. The Batman is very similar to the take that Bob Hastings does with his Commissioner Gordon here. And there's a line that's the most like goofy film noir ass line where Gordon goes, "Watch yourself, man. These guys are crazy."
As if that doesn't describe every Batman villain for the last like 65 years.
Yeah, and we get introduced to the idea of these guys just aren't acting on their own. They're acting on the behest of Red Claw, who we don't know who that is yet. But I assume Batman, as the world's greatest detective, is going to figure it out. But we have a very straight change in scene of it's time for Selina Kyle and Batman and Bruce Wayne's date. There was a line that I really loved when Selina was like, "I don't really want to go on this date. I wish it was Batman standing behind this door." And then there's Bruce, charming as hell, flowers in hand, in like the most tan suit I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Okay. When you know someone's net worth is in the, was it 10 figures? What's a billion? Am I crazy?
I think
there's
figures.
commas.
Yeah. There's commas. When you're in that range and someone shows up with like very basic roses and you know that they're worth that much, doesn't it kind of take you out of it a little bit? I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I have high standards.
Yeah. Maybe like inside of every rose was like a little diamond and she had to like search for it.
See, that's nice. But yeah, I don't know what I would expect otherwise. Rich, do you want him to just show up with like a Ferrari being like, "I got you,
here's
this
the
red
keys."
Ferrari. Like,
I mean, you can. You literally can. If you're a billionaire.
Of Ferraris.
Yeah, a bouquet. I got you a dozen Raris.
Oh my god.
Oh god.
But
Yeah, I'm saying like, you know, if someone's going to be
better.
showing up with just that insane amount of money, like the interest for having $1 billion in the bank period would essentially make up most of that Ferrari payment on the way to the date.
So I'm just going to write a note in my notebook that when Rich becomes a part of the Trace Commas Club, if he takes anyone on a date, we should be expecting a dozen Raris as the gift at the door.
I know we've talked a lot about like parallels to other Batmen that we've seen in cinema, but this is also, I think, the first time I've seen a Selina Kyle portrayed this way. I'm thinking on like the Anne Hathaway take from, not that that's like the definitive one. I'll be very clear. I'm not like discrediting Michelle Pfeiffer here, but like
I was about to
Hathaway,
say,
where
I'm
it was
going to have some problems.
The Anne Hathaway version where it's this very like hard scrabble, down in her luck Selina Kyle, the same kind of version that was portrayed by Zoe Kravitz's take in the Batman this year. And this is like ritzy penthouse, like, you
Activist.
know, cocktail dress Selina Kyle. And it's just like, it's another very different take compared to what we've seen in the past decade in film versions of this franchise.
Yeah.
Look at a lot of like the animated films though. She's always rich. Like I watched like a Catwoman anime and she was like super rich in that. She's super rich in Harley Quinn.
I was about to
animated
say,
series.
Ilsa,
Yeah.
she's like very rich, and like the way they portray her in the Harley Quinn animated series is bonkers. She's a mean girl. Like, it's such a well done, like, that's a show that maybe we'll do someday in the future, but like that was sort of the like, you know, I had the same realization of like, oh, this is like very unique, especially because this came after the Batman Michelle Pfeiffer portrayal of Catwoman. So the audience had a very clear understanding, at least for mass population who weren't following the comic books in like very, very closely. But there are like, although we don't know that at this point Selina Kyle is Catwoman, there are a lot of hints, right? She has a ton of cats. Like, I don't want to just say that, like, anyone with a ton of cats is Catwoman.
Hey, she could just be depressed. It's fine.
I don't remember the assistant's name. Yeah, no, that's...
And she wants that land for the mountain lions.
Yeah, so before they're going on their date, she gets a call from her lawyer, and seems very upset, and it seems like this business deal to acquire this land for conservation has been screwed up. She can't get on the phone with the owner of the business, the CEO. Multigon. But then in a moment, Bruce is like, oh, I got this handled, and we're instantly transported to the most villainous looking CEO office I have ever seen in my lifetime.
Do you remember a time where you just knew people's phone numbers?
Yeah.
It was interesting seeing, like, you instantly know this guy's the villain. He has a piano that's not a full piano built into the bar in a wild moment.
He's got one of those little Kanye West pianos. You know what I'm talking about?
If you started playing the Kanye dun, dun, I would have lost my mind.
If you play the entertainer, all of his secret plans come out.
Yeah, you know you're dealing with a villain where they have a trap door that shows the plans for architecture that have to be released by doing something else. And during this entire scene, you can tell that there's no way that this dude is selling off the land to Selina Kyle, even if she had the deal in place. But as Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle go away, we're introduced to our main villain, the villain behind the villain of Red Claw, played by Kate Mulgrew, whom a lot of people might know as Red from Orange is the New Black, which is just... She's doing that Russian accent once again. This was the original version of the Russian accent.
That's so funny.
Yeah, which is just hysterical to see. I do want to say about Red Claw, I was watching this with my partner, and she literally was like, Red Claw style, that's Gen Z all the way. Like, I could just see someone dressing like that immediately going out and about.
Just like a glitter arm tattoo.
Glitter arm tattoo, that's a Red Claw, you know, that red jumpsuit sort of look. But after this, what appeared to be a failed date, you know, Bruce and Selina have this wild chemistry, and they agree to, like, go on a proper date sometime soon. But then it's time to see what their alter egos or their other personas are doing.
It's delightful how they're both like, yeah, I've got to work late tonight.
Yeah. Oh, wait, is this the scene where Batman breaks into the mob meeting?
Yeah.
He's got some fucking moves. I'm sorry. Selina's insane for not wanting to get up all on that. Because, I mean, look at the core strength.
Well, Selina wants to get with Batman probably because of that, right? Like, the idea that if I was a mob boss at this point in time, I definitely have a weapon on my person. And then in the middle of a meeting, I hear someone coming down a rope doing gymnastics.
Though the gymnastics part is less threatening, to be honest.
The idea that no one just was like, you know what, I'm going to take my gun out and shoot at said person was insane to me.
Now, I've never been in a meeting amongst mob bosses, but I really enjoy how these guys are sitting at the table and how they're all drawn, and they're just like, guys, like, we gotta do more business with the illegal gambling. We gotta do more crimes. Like, the itinerary for the meeting.
No, that's what they're all like.
Do more crimes.
I've attended a few over Zoom. That's kind of what they're like.
But during this, Batman is sort of like, you have to tell me what's happening with Red Claw, threatens very much like, it's the only time we've seen Batman not be like, all crime is bad, but be like, I'll let you get away with this crime if you tell me about the other crime, sort of thing.
I mean, again, billionaire, you know?
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about, I have like this in notes in bold, that the person that they have as the main antagonist, like holding all the power of this crime syndicate, is a woman, which I don't think is a super common thread among comic book stories. And I think it was pretty cool seeing, like, well, both Catwoman is also kind of a villain in this, like, you know, until she's not. But, like, both of the people that have like garnered all this power and Batman is trying to stop are women, and it is pretty cool that is like the dynamic that they have, that they're taken seriously, and that like men are trembling before like while they're being told to do crimes and stuff like that. They're really holding the reins.
Yeah, like, also feel free to jump in, but like when I think of DC versus Marvel in many senses, like DC has low-key been a little bit more progressive about women and, like, power as a whole. Like, think about Wonder Woman, right? Like, this mainstay figure in the Justice League. With the Avengers, like, yeah, you sort of have Black Widow, like, but, like, she doesn't even have power. She just happens to be very good at martial arts and, like, sleuthing. And then, like, maybe Pepper Potts in Marvel, and where she's running this multi-billion-dollar business, but DC sort of has always had that, like, had some hand in, I'd say, being progressive.
Well, you're thinking, like, a lot about, like, the movies, and I think, like, the comic books always had really good female characters, and they were always, like, the most powerful, like how Jean Grey is, like, the most powerful mutant, how Wanda's, like, one of the most powerful mutants, like, the Omega level mutants, like, a lot of times were, like, women. And I think, like, Marvel never, like, talked about it. I feel like DC talks about it a lot. Like, I feel like at this time, like, 90s, like, women had already started to become people. Like, we weren't just women anymore. We were people. And so, like, there was, like, a big feminist movement.
Oh, hell yeah.
This is, like, when, like, Buffy the Vampire Slayer came out and things like that. So, and things like that. Sorry, I'm obsessed with Julia Fox. So I say that too much now. I'm so sad about it. But yeah, the thing about this episode, though, they are trying to be feminist, but, like, you couldn't say the things, like, today. Like, Batman has this line in the beginning that's like, oh, the new cat burglar's a woman? And it's, like, supposed to come as, like, oh, women
can do crime.
like, criminals, too. But, like, but it's trying to be feminist, and it was feminist at that time, I would say. But, like, watching it back, I was kind of like,
yeah, Batman's like, cat burglars supposed to be guys who wear striped shirts who walk on their tippy toes.
Exactly. He might as well have said that. And then what else? The Red Claw, like, Batman doesn't know who they are yet, so he uses male pronouns. And it's like, today, if you don't know who someone is, you use they. So, but he was straight up being like, who's Red Claw? Tell me who he is. And I was like,
I think that's like a little bit more of like, I think that was what was surprising about having women be the antagonists in that. Like, I don't have a ton of, like, comic book knowledge. Like, I know that Batman was, like, released in, like, the 50s or something like that. So obviously it probably wasn't a super common thread, like, in the original comic books, but I'm like, it's nice to see that evolved. But yeah, I think the assumption of he, like, made the reveal of Red Claw, like, a little bit more of, like, a power moment when I was watching it.
Yeah, and speaking of Red Claw, I love that the character is just, like, very much militarization. We are going to go, and we're going to go and, like, get this train that has all these weapons on it. I don't know if y'all giggled about this, but when the CEO of the organization interrupted the meeting, like, accidentally, and he did the little, oh, sorry, like, then
yeah, they put, like, a really weird, goofy sight gag in the background of this.
It was like it felt like The Office of, like, I fully expect that to be like a Steve Carell moment of just like, oh, sorry I interrupted. Like, keep on talking about your, like, crime stuff. I'm just in the background right now. Like, that was great. But
does anyone need any more coffee? Do you want me to top off the coffee?
Like, I literally had, like, everyone who's worked a corporate job has been that person and can relate to that moment much more than they can relate, and, like, knows Red Claw's disgust at that human being. But during this meeting, Selena Kyle has broken in. Catwoman has broken in. She has found out what is happening in the background. And we see her being chased through the vents. She is somehow escaping, but Batman somehow has figured out, hey, Catwoman's in trouble. And we get that kiss that we've been looking for a decent bit of time. To
be fair, it's been like 18 minutes.
But hey, we've been
waiting for it for 40 years.
We've been waiting for 18 minutes, and the payoff is great. But I did find it interesting that Batman was just like, okay, we kissed, now I get to unmask you. Like, it was like, it was a very weird, like, vibe of, like, not being patient, I guess. Like, I don't know how to describe it. What did you all think about this? Like, it was a release of tension, but still we want mystery moment.
This is a pretty unrelatable scene for me because I don't have an alter ego, so I don't know how precious that would be. But if anyone here does, please jump in.
There is a line in this ending sequence that I wrote down in all capitals, though, because I hollered at it, which is Selena says to Batman, "There's something between us," and Batman goes, "There is. It's the law." And I wrote it down all caps. I was dying at that so badly.
Yeah, and after this rescue, as Batman sort of says, like, yeah, he says the law scene, Catwoman then beats the shit out of Batman and gets away in that moment. It was ruthless.
It was crazy.
But as she gets back to her apartment, we're sort of left with this big cliffhanger of someone is getting photos of the entire thing, and we get the to be continued of the first episode.
Ooh.
And that is our pilot. Were there any things that we didn't discuss that y'all loved about this pilot?
I just need to talk voice cast for a minute here because there is so much talent involved. Obviously, you know, Kevin Conroy became a legend for this. I want to mention quickly that he was part of a Juilliard graduating class where two of his classmates were Christopher Reeve and Robin Williams. So insane. Sad that none of these three are with us anymore. But other people in this too, like Kate Mulgrew, we touched on, along with being Red and Orange is the New Black now. Many people might know her from Star Trek Voyager as Captain Janeway. Adrienne Barbeau, who plays Selena Kyle throughout this, is actually a Tony Award nominee. She was the original Rizzo in Grease on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
She had a huge run in the show. Maude as one of the leads as B. Arthur's daughter. She's in 80s films like Cannonball Run, Escape from New York, and Back to School. They really drew from a lot of people who had experience in theater and in soaps. Cliff Revel, who plays Alfred, he's not huge in this, but he's like a London Old Globe theater legend as well, like tons of Shakespearean experience. So it's just cool how they like didn't just draw from the usual plot of like goofy VO actors who did all the cartoons at this time, but they really sought out like actors and stage professionals to bring like a level of gravitas to this, which I think makes it so much better.
It's crazy that he was in the same Juilliard class. That there was three superheroes. It was Superman, Batman, and the scientist from Flubber.
Rich, Elsa, anything else that you like really loved about this pilot of television?
Rich, you can go first.
Oh, okay. I think it subverted a lot of. As this podcast resident hater, I am extremely against the over superheroification, comic bookification, Marvel universe insanity that our like the film industry has become. So I've become like very anti superhero movie, just because every single one seems to have like the same relative story and amount of excitement, and all of them make $1 billion for seemingly no reason. that is to say, I actually did really enjoy this. I was not expecting to enjoy the show in general, and I think it just touched something that was kind of like the visual humor of it, like the overall design of the show, like the aesthetics of the show were extremely cool, and yeah, I don't know, I just like really enjoyed myself, and I wasn't expecting to.
What about you, Elsa?
I feel the same. Like, I did enjoy myself, and I wasn't expecting myself to like something like the early 90s. I actually did like start to rewatch this series like a couple months ago, just because I was like, I don't know, in the mood to like watch more like comic book things. Because like opposite, I love it. And it's really good, and I am surprised that it was made for children. But a lot of the comic book cartoons that I've watched, like, as a kid, I feel like are a little bit, like...
Elevated?
Risque. Yeah, they're elevated. Like, I remember watching, like, the X-Men. And
yeah, we're definitely going to do that. We might need to bring you back for that episode, because I love the X-Men animated series.
Yeah, so good. So I was like, this is really good. Like, the 90s, they were doing it. They were doing it right.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about Danny Elfman. I would be remiss to not talk about Shirley Walker, who absolutely dominated the score for this series as a whole. Like the original music they used for this, like the orchestral music, is amazing, and it sets the tone of like Batman being larger than life, and this being more than just like a wacky kids cartoon, right? Like it's so grand as a whole.
Well, in preparing for this episode, I saw that Shirley Walker composed a unique score for every single episode in this show's run, which is just such an incredible attention to detail for what could have just been a children's animated daytime superhero show. It takes it to another level.
For sure. So we talked about things we loved. Were there any wait a minute moments that we didn't discuss that you wanted to talk about in more depth?
Well, I see you have written down here butts in a...
Yeah, that was me.
Okay.
There's such incredibly pert butts across all genders in this show. Like, there's a henchman when he's going after Selena, and he's got like a really perky high sitting butt. Everything with Catwoman in that suit, it's toned, it's tight. There's just so many butts throughout these 22 minutes.
Yeah, guys, I think I'm getting a call from the ass consultant for the Batman animated series. Let's bring him in here.
Also, Rich, anything as far as things that you sort of were like, caused you pause on this pilot?
Just like overall, the how it was like so blatantly trying to be feminist, but like wasn't technically. Like the little things that I mentioned earlier about like when he was like, oh, cat burglar, it was a woman. And then I did notice when Red Claw is revealed at the end, they do kind of like this score of like, there she is, that's Red Claw. And they did like this score like where you were supposed to be surprised that she was a woman. And I was like, no, that didn't really work. But other than that, I liked it.
Rich, what about you?
I'm gonna double down on the butts part. Awful lot of sexual undertones for this show. But I mean, as we've discussed, like especially on the Peanuts episode, like most children's things also have like a little bit of humor for the adults that are watching with the kids. I mean, it's ever present, like Rugrats, Hey Arnold, stuff like Ren and Stimpy. Like it is very, it's always just like, I think it's just part of the aesthetic.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that, you guys. Guess what? We have an in-flight voicemail question. If you would like to share your in-flight question, you can leave us a phone call at 213-290-1713 and make sure to check out our Instagram where we give previews of the shows that we're watching, so you can leave those questions. But let's hear our question.
Hey guys, appreciate the pick on this week's episode with the passing of our dear friend Kevin Conroy. But going off of the Man-Bat theme and kind of picking up with another Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde villain of Spider-Man, of the Lizard, just what animal would you transform yourself into that weird human hybrid thing that you could, if you just had your best chance, what would you do? All right,
I like
thanks.
that.
Bye.
So, for those who might have watched the wrong episode, the other episode of Batman that premiered. So, really cool thing. As Max discussed, Batman premiered at different times. And the Batman animated series also premiered on primetime for Fox, which is bonkers for an animated show, especially in the 90s. We've talked about a show that had a prime time in the 2000s, if you want to listen to the Father of the Pride episode. But the original primetime premiere was the Man-Bat episode. If you don't know who Man-Bat is, I would recommend looking him up. I'll make sure to throw a photo on the screen. But he is this hybrid, terrifying humanoid bat that flew the skylines of Gotham. But let's answer that question from our guest. What animal would you want to be a hybrid of? I have an answer, but I'd love to hear yours first.
I'm going raccoon. They can do anything. They can do anything. They got the little thumbs. They can hold on to stuff. They're super fast. They can survive on garbage. It's great. The world is meant for the raccoon.
Max, what about you?
Oh, God. I mean, I've never thought about this until just this moment.
What, you didn't have raccoon just ready to go?
I mean, Rich, you eat garbage. We know that.
It's true. I am from Chicago.
God, I feel like I would go, like, man deer. I would want to have, like, agility and the ability to have, like, really fine-tuned hearing and gracefulness. Things I don't have in my own life right now.
That's great. And Ilsa, what about you?
I think that I would go with an Ewok because I already feel like I am very similar to that. Like I kind of look like one. Like I might as well go full Ewok.
That's great. And I had a little bit of time to think about this because I got this question a little bit earlier than everyone else.
Not fair.
I would actually go with a bear. Because bears, they are super strong, they do good during the winter, and they're a lot faster than you would expect. And
they get to sleep for a really long time.
Oh yeah, hibernation sounds like a party. So it sounds perfect for me. Well, thank you for that in-flight question. We'll make sure to share that number again at the end of the podcast.
And to confirm that Elsa does indeed look like an Ewok, follow us on YouTube to watch this episode.
True.
So let's talk a little bit about the show's legacy before we get to Rich's game of the week. So there were 3 seasons of this show. The first 2 seasons were on Fox Kids. Third season was premiered 4 years later on Kids WB, Kids Warner Brother. So it navigated networks. There was a Sega CD video game that actually had footage of the Batman animated series that was considered the Lost Show, if that makes sense, which is pretty wild. There were also 2 animated films. Fun fact, everyone on this podcast went to Indiana University, and if you don't know who Michael Uslan is, he's really the reason that Batman is in pop culture like he currently is. He is an executive producer of almost every single Batman movie that ever came into existence.
Wow.
Indiana alum. There was 2 movies that had to do with this version of Batman. Mask of the Phantasm, which is a fantastic movie. Would recommend watching it. Was not successful in theaters, but had an entirely different life on VHS. There was also another movie that has a really funny story, Batman and Mr. Freeze, Sub-Zero. It was supposed to premiere at the same time as George Clooney's Batman and Robin. That movie did so poorly, they decided to delay the release of this animated like direct to VHS movie. And it got really good ratings, but they were like, we don't want anything to do with that.
Until things cooled down.
Oh my god.
So one
Max,
last note,
chill.
or two last notes that I have. This show was an Emmy winner. It won Best Animated Series at the Emmys. It also won Best Daytime Animated Series at the Emmys.
And also won Best Batman-related animated series, which is super impressive.
Yeah, that's an entirely different one. The show was technically shown out of order because they did weekends and they did daytime as well. They also showed some of the episodes, as I said, during prime time. Nominated for a total of 18 awards and won 6 of them. And when it won Best Animated Series, it beat out Inspector Gadget, Liquid Television, Ren and Stimpy, and The World of Peter Rabbit. So, fun facts right there.
I love Inspector Gadget.
One final thing. We talked a lot about Kevin Conroy. This episode is in honor of Kevin Conroy. Kevin Conroy was the voice of Batman for 31 years.
Jesus.
He has a total of 111 credits as an actor. 60 of them are Batman related. So when you say a career was made with one character, it really was R.I.P. to Kevin Conroy. Really, he is the Batman for many generation.
Did he get that job because he sounds like Adam West? Because I actually had to look up that it wasn't Adam West when I started watching the show. He really sounds like him.
Yeah, no, I think that was more of, there was influence of Adam West when he decided to do the role.
Okay.
But when it came to being Batman, he did sort of make it his own. And there's been a lot of folks who've done animated Batman since that have a little bit of a different take. Especially since the Christopher Nolan Batmans, those did a number on people doing the voice of Batman.
Understandable.
All right. Enough about Legacy. Rich, it's time for your Game of the Week.
Game of the Week. All right. So I have, instead of doing the what we've done in the past couple of weeks of essentially you guys each guessing which one is the fake, I want you guys to come to consensus on this. But I have looked up through the Batman Wikipedias of 4 of the funniest Batman villains that I could possibly find, and one fake one that I wrote, and I want you guys to come up with the consensus on which one is the fake one. So let me give you some descriptions. First, we have Squirrel Girl, Renee Ecruil, a vigilante killer who tortures Gotham with acorn-shaped bombs. Calendar Man, Julian Day, a villain that commits crimes based on holidays and significant dates. Count Vertigo, a villain born with vertigo, has a device in his skull that can give other people vertigo. Kite Man, Charles Brown, yes, Charlie Brown, commits crimes with kite-based weapons. Onomatopoeia, a serial killer who earned his name because he imitates noises around him, such as dripping faucets and gunshots.
So, I am going to take myself out of the running because I already know who is the one that he made.
I can't tell if that's impressive
how do you
or sad.
know?
I let's just say
he knows all these villains already.
I know all of the villains already.
We know Calendar Man and Kite Man are real, right? Yeah.
I know that Squirrel Girl is a character. I feel like I've heard like
she's
that
in
get
Marvel,
tossed.
Though. That's what confused me.
All right, well, it's still a person. So that takes us down to Onomatopoeia and Vertigo Man.
Vertigo.
That one I could not read without laughing.
So who do you two think it is?
I'm gonna say Vertigo Man because I know Rich likes to laugh at his own jokes.
I'll just do the opposite of whatever Max says. So it's the onomatopoeia person.
So Squirrel Girl is the fake one that I did not know was in Marvel at all.
Yeah, so
I made that up.
Fun fact about Squirrel Girl: there was a huge petition for Anna Kendrick to play Squirrel Girl in the Hulu animated series about Squirrel Girl. Very similar for Donald for Spider-Man. for Donald Glover to be Spider-Man. So, Rich, that was an
So
amazing...
I accidentally made up a superhero that exists?
She's a Great Lakes Avenger.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you said you're from Chicago. She's literally
Wait, the Great Lakes Avengers?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the
the
minor league baseball team I'm going to go see in a couple months.
Well, Rich, thank you so much for your question of the week. We always appreciate it. It's fun for me to know that I already knew the answer. Well, with all of that, I have 2 questions for y'all. Do we think that this show could be made today, and something a little bit different than what we've done before? We got it to be continued at the end of the episode. Would you watch part 2 of this pilot, and would you continue watching the series afterwards? Ilsa, I'll point it over to you. What do you think?
I liked it, so I did watch part 2, and I will probably keep watching it. Just, I don't know how long, but maybe like something. I actually have a show on Sunday for DC, so I should watch it.
Max, what about you?
Yeah, I absolutely think this could be made today. I think that just a show that's aimed at kids but without being like for kids could definitely resonate today. I would love to see like a harkening back to hand-drawn animation as well. And yeah, I mean, I watched part 2 immediately after because I had to know how this ended. There's a phenomenal line where Batman finds a cat hair on him, and they don't know like who's seen a hair like that before, and Batman goes, "Batman has," which it made me laugh out loud. It's delightful. I would totally watch more of this. It's so much fun. This is a great call, Geoff. Thank you for bringing this to my attention.
Rich, what about you?
I have to agree that I absolutely do want to watch more of it. I do not think it could be made today because I think there was like an era of campiness about the Batman franchise that led up to this. A lot of the 80s movies franchises for Batman had like, you know, the Arnold puns, or, you know, Danny DeVito as the Penguin, or you know, going back even further before that, of having like the groovy Batman series with Adam West and everything, and just like them experimenting about making it like a goofy kids character. I think that is completely gone. I think they have completely kind of thrown that away at this point. And if you're like trying to reinvigorate some like new like childhood attention into Batman where it's not all dark and gloomy and stuff like that, then yeah, that maybe they can give it a try, but you're not going to get any of the adult audience that's already been like the dark side of Batman.
All right, so my turn. Let's talk a little bit about, so as far as do I think that this show could be made today? I think a version of the show actually already exists. If you are like me and a bit of a nerd when it comes to comic books, you probably have seen the Young Justice series or Teen Titans. DC of the Marvel versus DC does the best job with non-movie series that are animated. I will put my foot in the ground and say that there's a variety of different things that you can choose from to get your fill of DC. Flash is ending this year, I think after 10 years as a TV show on primetime on CW. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there. I will continue watching this show, 100%. Max, I did the same thing. To be continued, not for long. I'm going to watch that next episode right away. So, yeah, I'm so happy that y'all enjoyed this. This is something that's close to my heart, and I'm happy that I could share it with you. Well, with all that said, as we are getting the signal to land, I want to make sure that folks know where we can find y'all. Ilsa, where can we find you? Where can our passengers find you if they want to get a little bit more of you in their lives?
So definitely subscribe to my podcast, Relatable Nerds. It's on Apple, Spotify, everywhere, like iHeartRadio, anywhere. We also have a YouTube channel. We do like live reactions to trailers. It's also Relatable Nerds. We're Relatable Nerds across socials. And then I am Ilsa the Joe on social. And I'm also on a sketch comedy team called Farty City. It's under Gold Comedy. So check that out as well. That's on YouTube.
Hell yeah.
Max,
you're
what about
speaking
yourself?
our language.
You can find me on all things social media at Maxwellsing. I don't know, maybe Mastodon by the time this thing airs. Fuck if I know. But yeah, all things right now at Maxwellsing.
Yeah, by the time this episode airs, you will find me on Tumblr and MySpace again. You can find me at Damn That's Rich on Instagram. Also, go ahead and, if you could, like and subscribe and rate the podcast on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeart. Do the same for Relatable Nerds, and enjoy yourselves.
And you can find me jumping from building to building in some city that is weird and has interesting geography. But you can also find me on social media at RunJeffRun. You can find the TV Pilots License on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Pilots License. If you have a question about the show or for our next episode, you can email us at tvpilotslicense@gmail.com or give us a call at 213-290-1713. Thanks again to Ilsa for joining us. Make sure to follow us on Instagram for sneak peeks of our upcoming episodes. With the plane landed, the seatbelt sign off, we look forward to flying the bright skies of the TV world with you again soon. And until then, I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
Save the mountain lions.